Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, reliving game one between the Wolves and the Grizzlies. What did the Timberwolves do well in game one that they need to continue to do in game two, that they should be able to hang their hats on moving forward into game two? And also, what did not go well that they must change if they want to take a 2-0 series lead back to Minnesota? Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves, and today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Happy Monday, everybody. And it's a victory Monday. The Timberwolves haven't played since Saturday, but I mean, there's an extra day off in between these games. The Timberwolves don't play again until Tuesday, of course. So, I mean, hey, take an extra day, revel in this. That's what we're going to do here today on the show. It's a little bit of a, reveling in game one as I did on the live postcast on Saturday. I'll get into some of that stuff, but also looking ahead to game two. We're right in between, and we're going to treat this as right in between. What can we take from game one and look ahead to game two? We're going to get to all that here in a moment. First of all, thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, Locked On Wolves is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, Odyssey. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken with two B's, two E's, C-K-E-N. A reminder that I am doing live postcasts with Chalanga Langason from the Zone Coverage and the C&D NBA show. We did that on Saturday. If you missed it, the live postcast that we did, it's typically about 12 minutes. We do it live on YouTube on the Locked On Minnesota Sports channel, and then it gets published to this feed, the audio feed for Locked On Wolves. This one will be on YouTube on Locked On Minnesota Sports, on all other audio platforms on the Locked On Wolves channel. So if you missed it, go back and listen to it. We gave our live reaction just moments following the final buzzer on Saturday. And we'll do that again, of course, Tuesday night after game two and for the rest of the season, which hopefully goes, several more weeks. That would be great. And so continue to expect those live postcasts from Chalanga and myself, and be sure to check that out. All right, so today on the show, I want to expand on a couple of things that Chalanga and I talked about on the live postcast on Saturday, what the Wolves did well, what stood out to us. And then I want to kind of look at the flip side, the things that didn't go well and what must change if the Timberwolves are going to be competitive. And I shouldn't say be competitive. If they can win game two, if they could win game two, if they can, there's historically teams that are favored, the higher seed that, loses in game one, especially in relatively convincing fashion. This wasn't a blowout, but it didn't come down to the final second. The final margin was 13 points. The Timberwolves were in control for most of the game. The Grizzlies never led by more than 2 points. Historically, those teams bounce back and play better in game two. We'll talk about the betonline.net line later, but it's essentially identical to what it was on Saturday. So Vegas is not buying the Timberwolves taking a 2-0 lead. They don't think that's a very likely possibility. So we'll get into all that later. I want to start with what went well, and again, kind of underscoring the things that Timberwolves fans be happy about this after game one, right? There are certainly a number of things that we can highlight. The first thing is obviously Anthony Edwards. I told Chalanga on Saturday that if Anthony Edwards was the 1A storyline, Towns was the 1B. I still feel that way. Anthony Edwards was the talk of the NBA, I don't know, Twitter sphere, all the NBA TV, TNT, ESPN, all the talking heads on television felt that Anthony Edwards was the number one storyline. And I agree. Now, if you're a Wolves fan and you followed the Timberwolves all season, you know that Anthony Edwards, this wasn't a surprise. He played well on Tuesday in the playing game against the Clippers. Ant likes the spotlight. He loves, I said this on Twitter during the game, he lives to silence opposing crowds. He is not afraid of the moment. He embraces the moment. And I know he says, it's so different for me. It's the same as a regular season game. There's no additional pressure. That might be true, and I believe him when he says that, but that doesn't mean that there isn't extra motivation in these moments. Ant knows it's the playoffs. He understands that more eyeballs are on him than ever before, and he's going to live up to that hype. He's going to play his absolute best game on both ends of the floor, and he did that. Now, the advantage he had in this game was the Grizzlies were so worried about D'Angelo Russell because he torched them in the regular season, averaged 32 points against them, shot over 50% from the field, well over 40% from three in 4 regular season games, had that one crazy fourth quarter where he scored 20-some points and leading the Wolves to a win against Memphis just a couple of months ago. Memphis was so keyed in on D'Angelo Russell and also, to a lesser extent on Karl-Anthony Towns. They did not defend him in the same way the Clippers did on Tuesday. That Anthony Edwards mostly had one-on-ones, and there's nobody on the Grizzlies that can guard Anthony Edwards one-on-one. There's hardly anyone in the NBA that can. Obviously, Dillon Brooks is a good defender, and I understand Dillon Brooks didn't play in any of those 4 regular season games against the Wolves. But in this game, Ant was just too much. I mean, he was not just high volume, jacking up three-pointers. He was good from all areas of the floor. 12 of 23 shooting, better than 50% from the field, 4 of 11 on threes, a perfect 8 of 8 from the free throw line, 6 assists, only 2 turnovers. He had 2 blocks and a steal in this game too. Just a fantastic all-around game from Anthony Edwards, and it's impossible to talk about this game without underscoring just how impressive that was. I think it was the 3rd or 4th highest scoring game by a rookie in their, or not a rookie, excuse me, by a player in their first playoff game. What's the other stat? One of only a handful of guys over that's the 3rd or 4th youngest player to score 30 plus in a playoff game. There's all these stats floating around, but just how impressive it was. But this wasn't simply a high volume, I'm going to jack the ball up at the rim every time I shoot it. This was an intelligent, really kind of well felt out performance. He was pulling all the right levers, pushing all the right buttons. Ant was distributing when the Grizzlies did choose to load up on him, and when they didn't, he was being effective with he was dribbling with a purpose, right? He got into isolation a couple of times, and he's obviously a good isolation player, but it can be a bad thing to just play in isolation. Sometimes that happens when the Wolves offense breaks down, and Chris Finch doesn't love it. But it was making the right reads in this game. I don't think he really had any major mistakes when it came to shot selection or, passing versus driving versus shooting a step back. This was just a well-rounded performance in every sense of that phrase for Anthony Edwards. The second thing I want to really focus on, and that's the 1B, is Karl-Anthony Towns. And to me, this is two parts to Karl-Anthony Towns. Number one, he was far more aggressive in this game than he was against the Clippers, and in the right way. He wasn't aggressive in an offensive foul way, right? Like he was that last offensive foul. I think it was his 5th foul against the Clippers when he could have gotten called for the one push off, lowers the shoulder, gets the second, what should have been a second charge, but that was called correctly as an offensive foul. It wasn't that like bowling ball Karl-Anthony Towns, I'm just going to knock guys over because they're not calling fouls and I'm angry about it. This was an appropriately aggressive Karl-Anthony Towns who was taking what the defense gave him, and not just in the cliche way. He really, truly was. If they were one-on-one in the perimeter, he was taking Steven Adams off the dribble, because why wouldn't you? If he got the ball on an offensive rebound, he could muscle up and get to the rim. He was doing that. If the Grizzlies brought a late double team after he put the ball on the floor, he had that baseline drive first quarter where he finished through Jaren Jackson and another, it was probably Adams and Jackson. There were 2 Memphis defenders that he finished through and didn't get a foul call, but finished at the rim. That was an appropriate, he didn't need to kick that one out to somebody else because it was a late double. He probably could have gotten a foul call. He did the right thing. He made the right read. Both Towns and Ant were so good in that regard in this game. The second piece of this for Towns is Chris Finch did more to creatively get him touches. We had Towns running around pin downs. We had him running off of curl screens. They ran a couple of baseline on a bounce plays for Karl-Anthony Towns to get shots. It wasn't simply face up on the perimeter or low post. They didn't really run many horn sets in this game. I don't think. It was really more of just, let's get him off the ball, move him around off the ball, run him around some screens, get him open, and allow him to go to work. And so credit to Chris Finch and the coaching staff for doing that. They did this for Malik Beasley in this game too, by the way. As soon as Beasley started the game hot, there was one, I think it was an ATO. It was the first play after a timeout, and they ran some kind of action. I think it was a double drag action on the right side of the floor where Beasley came around them, hit a deep, pretty contested 3, but it was a clean enough look. Those types of things, that creativity wasn't necessarily there on Tuesday against the Clippers. And part of that's the Clippers just they're a good defensive team. Obviously Memphis is too, but the Clippers played such a good defensive game on Tuesday. The Grizzlies were not on point defensively at all on Saturday. But still, the creativity from the Wolves coaching staff was undeniable. And that was underscored with how many clean looks Towns got and how easy it was for them to get Towns into the flow within the Timberwolves offense. So credit to the coaching staff for being able to do that. Okay. Next, I want to talk about a couple of other things that they did well, and then a couple of things that I'm concerned about headed into Tuesday that the Wolves need to kind of flip before Tuesday night's game. So we're going to get to that here next. First, though, let's talk about our friends over at Athletic Greens. Our next partner has a product that I use literally every single day. I started taking AG1 a couple of weeks ago because I didn't have a lot of time, frankly, and I just wanted better gut health. I wanted to be more energetic. I wanted to have an optimized immune system, really all those reasons. And if you're wondering what it is, I'll tell you. With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. It's a special blend of ingredients that supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and your aging. Really, all of the things. It's lifestyle friendly if you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy free, gluten free, whatever it is. It's lifestyle friendly. It has less than a gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, and still tastes good. It costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit or whatever other coffee habit or whatever it is you have. Some of those other products. Athletic Greens is the way to go. It was created when the founder experienced a ton of gut health issues and ended up on a complicated supplement routine to recover. It cost him over $100 a day. So he created Athletic Greens after experiencing how difficult it was to create an optimal nutrition routine all on your own. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1 year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NBA network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NBA network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Let's also talk about our friends over at Built Bar. If you're like me, by now we're almost a quarter of the way through the season, or through the year, I should say. You certainly give it up on your New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I've actually been sticking to my resolution to eat right all the way into mid-April. It almost feels like Built Bar, though, is not really a resolution, or Built Bar being part of my resolution to eat right, because I actually enjoy eating Built Bar. I really, truly do. If you haven't tried Built Puffs, you need to. It's the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. There's a ton of delicious flavors. And all Built Bars, if you're not familiar, head to built.com, check out the macros. There's a macros chart on there. You'll find that most Built Bars have just 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, and 4 grams net carbs, plus 17 grams of protein. Compare that to your average candy bar, which is going to have at least 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. We're right around Easter. If you had Easter candy in your house, say no to the Easter candy. Say yes to Built Bar, because they're fantastic. They truly do taste like candy bars. Built Bar is all about the taste. They make them taste delicious first and then figure out how to make them healthy. And I don't know how, but they pull it off every single time. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order. Again, that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, let's talk a couple other takeaways that I really like from Wolves Grizzlies. Overall, the Timberwolves rebounded the ball extremely well in this game, and they were physical. Those things generally go hand in hand, right? And both were true. I mean, the Grizzlies are supposed to be a physical team. The Timberwolves fancy themselves as being a physical team, but again, I think there's kind of this national narrative of, oh, the Timberwolves talk trash. They have Pat Bevs. They must be really physical. But if you watch the Wolves this year, outside of Beverly and Vanderbilt, there's times where this team doesn't look like they're interested in being physical, right? D'Angelo Russell's not a physical player. Karl-Anthony Towns can play physical, but he does not always play physical. Jaden McDaniels, same thing. He doesn't always get in there and battle on the glass for rebounds, right? Malik Beasley used to have a pretty clear aversion to getting in there and being physical, especially defensively on the glass. All those things are turning a little bit. So I do think this team's improving. But there was somebody on Memphis, I forget who it was. It might have been Ja, or it could have been Dylan Brooks, after the game, post-game Saturday, said, hey, this is a team, they want to be physical. The Wolves want to be, sure, but it hasn't really been their MO during the season. That has been an issue. They struggle with teams that are physical with them, like the Clippers. Every time they played the Clippers this season, LA tried to out-physical the Wolves, and it worked. I mean, they beat them 3 out of 4 in the regular season and almost beat them on Tuesday in the play-in. The Wolves brought the level of physicality to this game on Saturday in a really impressive way. And Jared Vanderbilt only played 19 minutes from a matchup perspective, and Jaden McDaniels made sense, Malik Beasley, and they both played extremely well. So it wasn't all like Jared Vanderbilt just being Jared Vanderbilt. It was Karl-Anthony Towns bringing it on the glass with 13 rebounds. It was Jaden McDaniels on both ends of the floor being aggressive. 7 rebounds for Jaden in this game, 4 of them offensive. He had that one really big one on the Towns airball at the end of the shot clock in the fourth quarter, where he caught the airball and put it up and in. Towns himself had 4 offensive rebounds. So that those things go hand in hand. They're not the exact same, but obviously to rebound, you have to be physical. And part of being physical is getting on the glass. The Grizzlies came into this game as by far the league's best offensive rebounding team. They only had 8 offensive rebounds in this game. The Wolves out offensive rebounded them. Minnesota had 11 offensive rebounds. Uh, and rebounding as a whole, the Grizzlies are a good defensive rebounding team. I think they're 10th in the league in defensive rebound percentage in the regular season. The Wolves were 29th in defensive rebound percentage. While they're a good offensive rebounding team, the defensive rebounding has been an issue for the Wolves all year. And they were a plus 11 on the glass in this game. The Wolves out rebounded the Grizzlies by 11 in this game. And that was a big part of their win. They were able to get out and run in transition. They were able to keep the Grizzlies off the offensive glass. Jaren Jackson Jr., one of the best offensive rebounders in the game, had 0 offensive rebounds in 24 minutes. And part of that was, well, a big part of that was the foul trouble, right? He had 5 personal fouls, only played 24 minutes. The Wolves were physical with Jaren Jackson Jr. in the right way. He was the one that was in foul trouble in this game, as was Steven Adams. He only had 1 offensive rebound. The Timberwolves were very keyed in on stopping Steven Adams from getting on the glass. Adams and Jaren Jackson are 2 of the best offensive rebounders in this league. And the Timberwolves were focused on stopping them or keeping them off of the offensive glass. And they did exactly that. Brandon Clark did his thing. He got 4 offensive rebounds off the bench, but that's half of what the Grizzlies ended up with as a team. And, there were a couple of those. He got a couple of those lobs. He had at least 1 offensive rebound that led to a dunk immediately for Clark. So he was a problem off the bench. But of those 3, if they combined to only have 5 offensive rebounds between Jackson, Adams, and Clark, that's pretty successful. I think Chris Finch and the staff are probably pretty happy with that. And they should do the exact same thing when it comes to rebounding. They need to get 2 to 3 bodies on Adams every time the ball goes up on the glass on Memphis's end of the floor. It's imperative that the Timberwolves limit the Grizzlies, keep them off the offensive glass, and keep them from getting those second chance opportunities. They did that in this game. And again, the level of physicality at an appropriate level, right? Obviously, the Grizzlies shot a million free throws, 43 free throw attempts, 20 of them from Ja Morant. But the Wolves, it never really felt like the Wolves were overly aggressive in terms of fouling, right? I mean, Ant, Pat Bev, and Jaden McDaniels and Malik Beasley all ended up with 5 fouls, but it wasn't really a recurring issue throughout the game. Beverly a little bit. He didn't come back in the game in the second half. He missed like from early in the third to mid fourth quarter because of the foul trouble. But that's really it. I mean, Towns wasn't in foul trouble, wasn't an issue, throughout the game for any of the other guys. But still, I think it was the appropriate level of physicality and a fantastic job on the glass for Minnesota that allowed them to make sure that they were able to build a double-digit lead late in this game and hold on to win. Okay, I got one more thing, and then I want to get into a couple of things I'm worried about coming into the next game. Jaden McDaniels, I didn't talk enough about him on the postcast. I'll admit that on Saturday, and now I probably waited too long, 20 minutes into the show to talk about him today. Jaden McDaniels was phenomenal on Saturday, and he started to get a little bit of love in terms of the national, media paying attention to him on Saturday. 15 and 7, 3 blocks, 2 assists for Jaden McDaniels, 5 of 6 shooting, 2 of 3 on threes. He had 3 blocks in this game. He was a team best, or game best, I should say, plus 19 in the plus minus column. Just a fantastic game. He was asked to do a variety of things defensively. He did them all. He picked his spots on offense. He was aggressive when he was asked to be aggressive. The one mid-range jumper he made, he was just beyond the free throw line, was a situation when the Grizzlies were denying Towns the catch on the left block, and McDaniels flashed to the free throw line, which is exactly what you're supposed to do. If the defense isn't paying attention to you, they're loading up on Towns. A back cut's not going to work, right? The spacing won't work if you just back cut to the rim. The angle's not there to stay on the perimeter from where Jaden McDaniels was. So what did he do? He flashed to the nail. He flashed the free throw line. And whoever it was, D'Lo or Beverly, whoever had the ball, gave him a perfect pass. McDaniels knocked down a mid-range jumper. That's exactly what you have to do when the opposing team is playing a zone, or when they're, loading up on your best player, they're denying the catch in the post. You do what Jaden McDaniels did. That's the sort of thing he did not do as a rookie or even earlier this year. That is a feel thing. Jaden McDaniels had no feel as a rookie, and most rookies don't, right? Anthony Edwards had very little too. But now that the feel is there, the confidence is there, he knows his role is to play phenomenal defense and every now and again put up a 15 and 7 and be that guy who could be your 4th scorer on any given night, which he was in this game, by the way. He was 4th on the Timberwolves in scoring. And he can have those nights. He has that talent. And we could be witnessing, yes, we're likely witnessing an Anthony Edwards jump, or a mini jump at least, from, fringe level stardom into true stardom. And perhaps next year he leaps into true superstardom and the Wolves become the Grizzlies of this year, right? A top 2-3 seed in the West. That's all possible. But Jaden McDaniels could be making that leap from nice, exciting role player to starting caliber, 3rd, 4th, 5th best player on a good team. he's not far away from that. And if he plays like he did on Saturday throughout this series, the Timberwolves have a really good shot at winning this series. Jaden McDaniels does this every single night. It was just an incredible game from Jaden. Okay, I want to close with the things that concern me about Saturday's game. Obviously, not everything can be perfect, and it wasn't. So, what does that mean looking ahead to Tuesday and to game 2? So, we're going to do that next. First, though, let's talk about our friends over at betonline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the MLB, the Major League Baseball season. By the way, speaking of BetOnline, the line for Tuesday on BetOnline.net is Memphis -7 over the Timberwolves. I believe it opened at 7.5. It was 7.5 for Saturday's game, and it stayed there. So I think this one's already dropped by a half point. I understand the history. I think it's, certainly possible the Grizzlies win this game, but 7 feels like a really steep number on a couple of days rest. Minnesota having tons of momentum, finishing the game strong Saturday. I don't know. 7 seems high, but whatever. Check that out at betonline.net. I wouldn't be surprised if it moved a little bit more back towards down by 6.5 or so by Tuesday. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's close this thing out by talking about a couple things that didn't go all that well for the Wolves on Saturday. Number one, the foul issue. So I alluded to this in the last segment, but I didn't allude to it. I talked about it a little bit about how the Wolves did foul a lot. They had 4 guys with 5 fouls each, although nobody fouled out. But Memphis shot 43 free throws in this game. They were a plus 16 in terms of free throw attempts. Now, they didn't shoot the ball that well at the line, so the Wolves were actually only a -8 in terms of made free throws, but they were a -16 in terms of free throw attempts for the Grizzlies. Ja Morant had 20 of their 43 attempts. And I will say, of Ja's free throw trips to the line, I don't know, at least 3 or 4 of those trips, so 6 to 8 of those free throw attempts came off of, we'll call it questionable levels of contact. I think there's a little bit of a reputation precedes when it comes to Ja Morant drawing fouls and the Wolves committing fouls, which isn't great. It doesn't bode well for the rest of the series. But on the flip side, the Wolves won, and the Grizzlies, Josh had 20 free throw attempts. So will the Wolves continue to defend Ja Morant in the same way? Will they continue to try and trap him and blitz him, try and force the ball out of his hands? I think yes. I don't think he's going to get 20 free throw attempts every game in this series. He's not going to get that same whistle the entire time through. I don't think. In general, though, the Timberwolves need to be a little bit more careful in terms of fouling. It's not often you're a -16 in the free throw attempt column and you hold on to win the game. Thankfully, the Grizzlies shot only 74% on free throws. And yes, this ended up being a 13-point win, but it was closer than that, right? This was a 2-possession game with under 2 minutes to play, right around there, right? 2 or 3 possessions with right around 2 minutes to play. And the Wolves just simply played the foul game down the stretch and extended that lead. Got a couple of open dunks when the Grizzlies were trying to trap full court. But the free throw differential worries me a little bit. I mean, the Timberwolves were the most foul-prone team in the league this year. They were the team that allowed opponents to shoot the most free throws, the highest opponent free throw rate of any team in the NBA. The Grizzlies can get to the line. The Grizzlies get to the rim a bunch. They shoot a bunch of floaters. They get offensive rebounds. A lot of what the Grizzlies do is in and around the paint, and that's where the Timberwolves, of course, are most prone to foul. So they've got to clean that up a little bit. I've been saying it all season long. This is what it worries me, that's what's going to come back to bite them at some point in the playoffs, is just the propensity to foul. Now, after the game, the Grizzlies were griping a little bit about how they thought this was the playoffs and not everything would be called in regard to the foul trouble, right? The foul trouble primarily to Jaren Jackson Jr. and Dylan Brooks. Well, you can't really have it both ways. You guys shot 43 free throws, so you did get a lot of foul calls on your side too. So there's that. The second thing would be the turnover differential. The Timberwolves turned teams over at a higher clip than any other defense in the league. They were number 1 in forcing an opponent turnover rate, forcing turnovers on their opponents. They only forced 11 turnovers in this game. They were -6. They committed 17 themselves. Now, 10 of them were in the second quarter. Minnesota was far too sloppy in this game with the ball, and especially in the second quarter. So that is a concern moving forward because Memphis can turn you over as well. They're obviously a very good defense overall. It led to a lot of fast break points for Memphis. Those live ball turnovers, some lob dunks, some easy dunks in transition. So The turnovers and the fouls both need to get cleaned up for Minnesota. They were very fortunate. It's not often you could be a -6, especially for a team that relies so heavily on generating turnovers, getting those easy, fast break points, scoring in the secondary break, getting Malik Beasley flying to the corner, Karl-Anthony Towns, rim running, D'Angelo Russell pulling up from 30 feet. They rely on these live ball turnovers that they generate to get going the other way. And they didn't see a ton of that in this game, yet they still dropped 130 points. I don't know that it's going to be that easy to score in the half court moving forward against Memphis or potentially any other opponent if the Wolves do get past the Grizzlies. But Memphis is too good of a defensive team in the half court to allow this to happen moving forward. And the Wolves can't beat themselves with these turnovers. So that to me is the next important thing the Wolves need to lock in on. And I think it's far more likely they can do that than that they can avoid fouling, right? It's in their DNA as an aggressive blitzing defense, and their individual players being as aggressive as they are, they're going to commit some fouls, right? And Ja's going to draw fouls. So the number one is the turnover thing. Don't give them free possessions. Don't give them free runs to the rim in transition. Don't put yourself in a position to commit a clear path foul like we saw late in the game on Saturday afternoon. Play better, play more solid offensively. Don't give those turnovers away, right? That to me is number one going into Tuesday. Okay, we've still got another day, unfortunately, until game 2. It's Tuesday night at 7:30 Central, I believe, on NBA TV. I don't know how this series ended up on NBA TV, but here we are. We'll talk more about this and preview the game Tuesday night on Tuesday's show. And then, of course, we'll do the live postcast immediately following the game Tuesday, plus a full post-game podcast that'll post late Tuesday night into Wednesday. So tons more coverage daily here on this series. Make sure you're following and you're subscribed to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And thank you to those of you that do make Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. A reminder, you can watch on YouTube. All these episodes are on YouTube, and then the live postcast will be on Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. Plus, will be posted to the regular feed, which, of course, you can listen anywhere you like to listen to podcasts: Apple, Google, Spotify, Odyssey. You can find Locked On Wolves. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked On T Wolves and at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. Thanks again for listening to Locked On Wolves. Of course, Locked On Wolves is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. And while you're making us your first listen, don't forget to listen to Locked On NBA. Make them your second listen. From the first jump ball to play in tournament to the last possession of the finals, Locked On experts take you deep inside the playoffs with insight and analysis affecting all 30 teams. If you listen to today's, by the way, hosted by Jackson Gatlin, who's also the fantastic host of Locked On Rockets, I was on the show, did a segment talking about the Wolves this weekend. So go listen to Locked On NBA, and you'll hear yours truly on Monday. But each day of the week, Monday through Friday, there are different hosts that host that show. So be sure to tune in. All right, that's all I have for you today. Thanks again for listening. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast. We'll catch you next time.